And Israeli tanks have been spotted rolling towards Gaza today. These images were taken less than 4 kilometers from the border. Speculation is growing that Israel may decide to launch a land invasion to free those soldiers and civilians taken captive. For more on this, we're joined now by Haggai Matar. He's an Israeli political activist and the executive director of Plus 972 magazine, an independent magazine run by both Palestinian and Israeli journalists. We've reached Haggai in Tel Aviv. And before we begin our conversation, we want to warn our viewers that some of the details we'll discuss could be disturbing. With that, Haggai, thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to begin with something difficult, if you'll permit me. I understand that some of your family members have been either abducted or killed. What can you share about that?
Yes, it's not direct family members. It is family members of friends and some friends that have either gone into Gaza. These are colleagues, people in the peace movement, that have been very long time involved in actions against occupation. There are friends whose family members have been abducted or killed during the attack, people who were slaughtered in their homes or taken from their homes with their children. So it's something that entire communities basically have been destroyed in this attack, in these very criminal attack against communities in the south of Israel.
Talk to me about these last 2 days and what it's been like for you.
It's been absolutely terrifying. This is an attack kind of which we've never seen before. It's completely unprecedented. The last time that such a considerable foreign force entered Israeli territory was in 1948. So it's something that none of us have ever lived through. And that feeling of dread is something that is felt throughout Israeli society today. I think what is important to remember is that we have not been feeling these feelings because we've developed this sense of immunity of having this powerful army that protects us. Meanwhile, that very same army was inflicting very similar crimes against Palestinians for many, many years. So what we're seeing right now happening in Gaza and what we have seen in Gaza throughout the past 2 decades, recurring attacks where thousands of people were killed, many of them entire families and children, the elderly. That's something Palestinians have been living through for years. And now, unfortunately, we Israelis are feeling the same.
Haggai, I have to tell you that this is not often a perspective that we hear, that what Israel is going through now is what Palestinians have been going through for a long time. We don't hear that from the Israeli side that often. So how widely shared do you think that sentiment is, a sort of camaraderie between the two sides?
You're right. It is something that very few Israelis would say. It has to do with the way that Israeli media and public and political discourse have been run for the past 2 decades. If you look at the Israeli opposition, it has completely abandoned the cause of ending occupation, ending apartheid, promoting Palestinian rights and promoting peace. It has no longer been an issue for Israeli politics or the Israeli public for the past years, exactly because, I would argue, the occupation has gotten to the point where Israelis feel that it costs nothing. It affects us little to nothing. And therefore, we can continue with it seamlessly without problems. And this is why it's stopped being an issue that people discuss. And therefore, they're not following and they're not understanding what is happening to Palestinians, what our army has been doing to Palestinians. And when something like this happens, it feels unprovoked. It feels unilateral. And while it was a complete shock and felt out of context for Israelis, for Palestinians, there has been context all these years.
You work on this magazine along with Palestinian colleagues. I imagine many of them are like-minded. What have the conversations been like with them in these past 2 days?
They're very interesting conversations. They're very painful conversations. And I think first and foremost, we all share a vision of an end of apartheid and justice for everyone who lives here. What motivates us as journalists is a will to make sure that this land between the river and the sea is a home for everyone who lives here. And also a recognition that that has not been the case, that Israel has led a regime of apartheid that differentiates between Jews and Palestinians in different ways in different parts of the land. And our shared vision is to reject that reality. And within that context, we all agree that acts like this are terrible. Some see them as completely unwarranted. Others, I would say, well, what other choice do Palestinians have? I don't hold that position, but these are discussions that people are having, especially as Palestinians have lost all their bargaining chips in the support of the international community over the past years, and really have been sidelined in international politics and diplomacy.
Haggai, is there a conversation happening that if Palestinians feel, as you said, they've lost all their bargaining chips, was there an alternative to launching rockets into Israeli territory? What could have been another way to address what is seen as an injustice being done to the people of Palestinian territories, of Palestinian ethnicity and background, particularly in the Gaza Strip?
But I think far be it for me to determine the conditions or the ways that Palestinians should lead their own struggle. At the same time, I can say there have been different methods tried, such as the boycott, divestment, and sanctions campaign, attempts to go to international courts, to the UN. Many of these attempts have been blocked. We know that the US has been serving to block any attempt of the UN to intervene effectively. We know that Arab states that used to be a little bit more of allies to Palestinians have gradually been abandoning them and signing normalization and peace deals with Israel. So those other avenues of effect have been limited, but that is not to say that in any way that it is justified to go into houses, murder entire families and civilians. It's just a very, very difficult position for Palestinians to be in.
Haggai Matar, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.